Hey everybody, this is Robert from Black Belt Gaming. I hope you're doing well. I thought I would go into some different games in my collection, my role-playing game collection. And some of these I've played, some of these I've played a lot, and others I own and have read, but really haven't had a chance to play them yet. And I thought it would be a good exercise and some fun to go through some of these things in my collection and share them with you. In addition to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition, which I am continuing that series, I thought I would share with you something that I did enjoy and have held on to for years now, and that's Alternity. This is the classic Alternity from the TSR company, the company that originally published Dungeons and Dragons. So this is classic Alternity. I understand there may have been a remake, but I have and enjoy the classic, so that's what I have. And I haven't had a chance to play this one recently, so I need to sort of go back into the rules and get familiar with some of them again. And I'm sure there's going to be some new rules I come across because I had a group and we played and we had a lot of fun with this, but I haven't played this one as long as I've played some of the other games like Dungeons and Dragons. So Alternity is it's sort of like the Dungeons and Dragons system. It uses the same dice. You actually have ability scores like strength, dexterity, constitution. You have the six. There's just a couple that have a different name. It's very similar. You'll be able to see those similarities as we start going through. But this is a science fiction game, a futuristic game. You can play at different technology levels, whether that's in the near future or the far future. The default setting is quite far into the future, so you're able to travel from different star systems and that kind of thing. But this is Alternity, the player's handbook. Alternity had a setting, a science fiction setting called Star Drive that was its main setting. But you could make your own, and they also came out with some other settings too, at least one other one that I know about. And I have most everything for this game, but not all of it. I think I'm missing just a few things. But let's sort of take this in bite-sized pieces, and let's just start with a quick look at just sort of the basic die rolling technique that you use in the Alternity game. One of the best ways to start figuring out a system, I think, is to take a look at a character sheet and just see what's on it. And you're going to see quite a bit on here, just lots of numbers, but don't let that intimidate you. It's not as complicated as it may look. This is a combat specialist, a soldier, so basically a fighter is what we're looking at. And we have over here the ability scores, and these look pretty familiar: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence. And then we have will and personality. Quite easy to understand if you have any background in Dungeons and Dragons. Here are the scores. They actually may look a little lower than what you might be used to, especially in more recent editions of Dungeons and Dragons. But top score here is 12. And you see a little category over here called untrained. And the numbers seem lower. In fact, it's about half rounded down. So one of the basic ideas of this game is to roll a d20, a 20-sided dice, and you try to get that number or less. So if you're attempting something untrained with your strength, you roll that d20 and you're trying to get a 6 or less. So it's kind of getting difficult there when you're not trained in something specifically. Over here in this little area, you see something called a resistance modifier. That's sort of like a ability score modifier. Like, let's take dexterity. In Dungeons and Dragons, if you have a modifier to your dexterity, it usually gives a bonus to your armor class, making you harder to hit. That's basically what this does too. Now, it's not just a +1, it's actually going to change what kind of dice you're rolling when you're attempting to resist something. So if someone is trying to shoot you, they're going to be rolling that d20 and another die along with it based on how many steps they need to take according to the situation, the range, and then maybe how fast you are using your dexterity. Let me take you down the character sheet just a little bit into some of the skills. So this is a game that has a skills system, and you have sort of a general skill, like in strength. Athletics, I think, is considered kind of a general basic skill, and then there are certain specializations. So I think, if I remember correctly, this is usually going to allow you, instead of using half of your strength score untrained, the general skill is going to allow you to use your full score. So it's going to allow you to use that 12. But if you look over here, you see there is a 12, but then there's a slash and a 6 and a slash and a 3. That is something unique to this game, that yes, you need to roll a 12 or less. But if you roll half of that or less, that 6 or less, then you reach an even greater level of success. So an ordinary success becomes, good. And if you roll even lower, like a 3 or less, it becomes an amazing success, and you have an even greater degree of success in what you're doing. So let's take a look at something that's a specialization. If we look at dexterity, and we have modern ranged weapons, and there's rifle. Rifle is a specific type of weapon under the ranged weapons. And this soldier has 2 ranks in rifle. So their dexterity is 11, but adding those 2 ranks boosts it to a 13. You half that number, but you have to round down. So we go 13, 6, 3. So that means you have those different levels of successes. And what that would do, if we move down just a little more and we take a look into the weapons area, and we have a charge rifle here, we have the damage listed, and we have the first damage being a d6 plus 1, and there's a little W, which means wounds. Beside that, when you get that next level of success, that even lower number, instead of a +1, it's adding a +3. So you're going to do 2 points more damage of wounds when you hit with that 6. And then if you manage to roll a 3 or less, you're going to do a d6 plus 1, and there's an M. The M stands for mortal damage. And that's killing damage. That's what can take your character out. So that's how these degrees of successes work. And if we look just a little farther down, you may be wondering about, well, what about something like armor class and how that works? Armor is basically going to absorb damage. So let's say you were hit by the rifle for that d6 plus 1 wounds, that ordinary success. let's just say you scored a 4 on the d6 and added +1 for 5 wounds to the character. This character has a battle jacket, so let's see if they can absorb their own damage. We need to take a look at the type of damage it is, if it's light impact, heavy impact, or energy weapon. The charge rifle is considered a high impact weapon, so we have that little HI here. So we roll a d4 and add 1, and that's how many points of damage we subtract from the damage roll. So if we rolled a 4 and we got that, wasn't it +1, we could actually cancel the 5 damage that we did with the rifle. So that's just the gist of how that works. So the armor doesn't really go up according to successes. It's the attack roll that the successes matter. What you look at for the armor and the different numbers is what type of damage it's resisting. So you might have something that's really good at canceling a laser, but maybe not very good at stopping a bullet. So yeah, that's how that works. So here's your durability. It's like your hit points. And I'm going to go more into this later, but I'll just sort of let you know that there are different kinds. It's not just one score. You've got stun points, and you've got wound points, and you've got mortal points. And it's like I said before, when you run out of the mortal damage, your character is going to die. But let's take one more look at the D20 roll, which is really the key to playing this game and how to use its main rule, which is going up and down different steps. Okay, so I've jumped ahead to chapter 3, and basically, again, you're using a 20-sided dice. That just means an average check, an average skill roll when you're attempting to accomplish something. And let's say you're trying to use your rifle and you're shooting at someone maybe at medium range, and maybe for the rifle, maybe the rifle likes medium range and there's no penalty or bonus, so just kind of a standard roll. However, you're shooting at someone who had a higher dexterity and their resistance modifier was +1. That +1 actually moves you down a step, and you'll see it over here, +1. And it becomes a tough shot. And it's kind of nice, it has a little picture here. You've got your D20 plus a D4. So if you're trying to make that roll of a 13 or less with your rifle, you need to roll a D20, you need to roll a D4 and add them together. And together, if they're a 13 or less, then you've successfully shot them. If it's over that, then you've missed. And so maybe there was something else, maybe a high wind or poor lighting or something like that. You could actually get an additional step, and you could go to +2 steps, and that tough became hard. And now you're rolling a D20 plus a D6. And you need to roll both of those, add them together, and if you get a 13 or less, then you've hit. So as you can see, it keeps moving up, going to 3 steps with a D8 and 4 steps. You'd think it might be a D10, but it jumps to a D12. And then after that, it's 2 20-sided dice, 3 20-sided dice, and then 4 20-sided dice. It can get crazy hard. But if you have things in your favor, it can go down the other way. When I played this game, There are a lot of different ways to look up and see exactly how many steps in one direction or another you may need to go. And I think it can get quite specific, and you can start spending some time really counting up and down and trying to get the right number. But the rule book encourages you in one section in here to eyeball it, and that's what I did. It keeps the game moving, and you just kind of get a general feel, and you say, yeah, that's probably really easy for you, or no, that's going to be quite hard. And you just sort of say, all right, it's a plus 2 steps, or roll a d20 and a d8, roll a d20 and a d6, and tell them add or subtract or whatever, and it can move along pretty quickly. And that's just the main rule of Alternity. And you're going up and down that those steps, +1, -1. And we sort of took a look at how damage and levels of success worked, and how armor worked. And I think that's plenty to go over today. There's so much more, and there's so much interesting to go over in Alternity, and I'm looking forward to going through that with you in the near future. But I thought that'd be a good start, and I've always found this game to be a lot of fun, and it's too bad that it didn't have more of a lifespan. But I think this game was cut short by the birth of the D20 system and the coming of 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons. I thought I read something about Alternity was some kind of experiment to maybe see if this is how we want to go with things in the future, but it ended up taking a different turn. But it's an interesting piece in kind of TSR history, and the development on the way to 3rd edition, and the D20 system. So it does use a D20, but it's a bit different. And we'll talk about it again some other time. So thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you later.